Hey drinking buddies, Inakayaki is here. This award-winning rice cake has subtle flavors of sesame seeds, salt, shrimp, and seaweed. Top with mozzarella and pair with Sauvignon Blanc for a wheat cracker alternative. Head to www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and use code BuddyShow to get 10% off your first order of Inakayaki.
And that was an amazing experience. Even while I was painting that on the street, kids would walk up and say, "Oh, wow, it's a little kid. Like, that's so cool." And they'd say, "Mommy, look."
This is the Drinking Buddies Show, where we explore food, craft, beverage pairings, and the entrepreneurs and tastemakers behind them. I'm Frank, founder of Drinking Buddy Artisan Snacks. On today's show, artist LaJon Miller joins me in Long Beach, California. LaJon began drawing at an early age, copying his favorite graphic novel artists and notebooks. But what brought LaJon from sketches to murals and paintings he's known for today? How did art, something he was told couldn't be a career, become his full-time passion? I sat down with LaJon to hear about his journey. LaJon, thank you for being on the Drinking Buddies show. If you could first tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe introduce that other voice we're hearing.
All right. Well, this is Elliot Jagger, my 10-month-old daughter. My name is LaJon Miller. I've been an artist for a very, very long time, drawing since I was 4. I don't know what I could say I specialize in, but I do a lot of canvas work and mural work. A lot of I guess I do a lot of artwork that centers around femininity and empowered women and female figures, and more specifically towards the warrior and samurai concepts and ideas. I've been drawn to samurais and Eastern culture for a long time, growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s and looking at a lot of anime and martial arts films and manga and comic books and things like that. I've always been drawn to that genre just because I was exposed to it at an early age.
Yes, I saw in your biography that you were inspired by a lot of cartoons. So you started, like you mentioned, you were drawing when you're 4. What were some of the cartoons you really liked?
I watched a lot of Saturday morning stuff like G.I. Joe and Thundercats, and even going further back into like Warner Brothers stuff like the Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera cartoons like the Flintstones and the Jetsons, Woody Woodpecker, even Popeye. So I've been around cartoons and animation for a long time, and it's always been drawn to that style of artwork and creativity because it was around me, or I was around it so much, especially Saturday morning cartoons, and that was like an all day thing as a kid. Like, couldn't wait to get up early, 6 o'clock in the morning, and see what cartoons and watch it as long as I could until I was like, okay, it's time to go play outside.
Yeah, something that I think kids nowadays can't relate to because you can just stream everything.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that whole looking forward to waking up and like, I'll just watch it later.
Yeah,
Or
you can
add
just
it to
watch
my
it whenever
queue.
you want. Yeah, so for the youngest people, no, you couldn't do that.
Yeah. I'd get up early in the morning before school and try to catch like that early morning cartoon and get that in before I had to get up and get breakfast. So always around cartoons and animation.
So were you like drawing in a notebook, or what did you start doing?
It was any piece of paper that I could pretty much find. My parents did get me sketchbooks and drawing pads and things like that. I got a lot of support from my parents, even when I was distracted in school, or the teachers would say, "Hey, LaJon, he's bright and he's smart, but his head's in the clouds, or he's off imagination, or he's drawing all the time." So it wasn't, I wasn't punished. I just was kind of like, hey, let's put more focus in school, but we'll still let you draw. They didn't take my stuff away or take my pencils away or anything like that. They just said, hey, you got to do a little bit more than just drawing at school all day long.
Now, did anybody in school or anyone around you recognize your drive and your talent for art and encourage you?
Yeah. The family did, definitely. I did have some teachers and instructors growing up that encouraged it, but I didn't take an actual formal drawing or art class until like my senior year in high school. And it was more like I had to take a fine art class for just for the credits to graduate, because the only artistic, or I guess fine art related classes I took in high school were like ceramics, and I think I took a drafting class, but that's not really fine art. It's more technical and design driven. But it was kind of winding down to the end of my junior year, and my guidance counselor was like, you know, you got to take a fine art or foreign language so you can get enough credits to graduate. So I just said, okay, just stick me in an art class, because I was actually drawing in high school, but I was drawing a lot of comic book related stuff. So I was big into comic books. I got exposed to comic books pretty early too as well. My dad collected comic books, but I didn't find this out until years later, when he was telling me a story that his mother kind of threw it all away when he went to the army and he came back. But you know, Captain America, Black Panther, all the Marvel stuff, all the DC stuff, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, you name it. And I was actually in high school, I was drawing on people's book covers to make a little extra money to buy more comic books. Back when, you know, drawing on book covers was a thing and stuff like that. But never took any formal classes. I was just kind of drawing what I was looking at and just copying what Stan Lee or Jack Kirby or Todd McFarlane was doing on the covers. And I'll tell you a story. So my senior year, I had a art instructor, and because I was a senior, I couldn't take a beginning art class. I had to take an advanced art class, but because I had not taken any previous classes, I had to show the teacher a portfolio, and I had no idea what a portfolio was. I didn't even know what the word meant. And the art teacher kind of laughed at me. And then he said, well, you have to put something in a folder, your best work that you have. Me thinking, oh, okay, I've been drawing for a long time, and a lot of family and friends have told me I was pretty good. I just tore out a bunch of sheets from some lined paper and some sketching paper and threw it into a peachy folder. And I brought that into class, and he laughed at it. And I was embarrassed and devastated, because for this whole time, I thought I was pretty good, because everyone was telling me, you know, LaJon's pretty good. The reason he laughed at it was because all of my knowledge of drawing was from looking at other comic book artists draw anatomy. And he told me that's not how humans look. And so it was a huge blow to my ego and my self-esteem, but it was probably one of the best learning lessons I ever got, because I hadn't realized that most of these artists were formally trained first, and their style came from the fundamentals of drawing the human body. So this art teacher gave me a bunch of fitness magazines and muscle magazines and workout magazines, and said, you need to draw 2 or 3 pages from each of these magazines and bring that back in. And then I'll look over your portfolio and I'll see whether or not you have the ability to stay in this advanced art class. Long story short, he was satisfied with what I brought in, but he said I'd have to work the hardest, because I had to catch up to all the other students. Because every other student that was in that class had already taken at least 2 years of art prior to this advanced art class.
That's interesting. So it's almost like somebody that had learned to play music listening to their favorite songs, and then they go to a formal music teacher and they're like, but you need to learn all of the scales and all the other stuff.
Yes, exactly. That was a lesson, I think, that I needed to learn. And it was interesting, because I used to have these like correspondence type art classes that you would draw something and send it to some guy out in Delaware or something, and he would circle a bunch of incorrections and mistakes and send it back and tell you to redraw it and fix all this stuff. So I was doing stuff like that, but that was just somebody telling me this is wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, and not why it's wrong or what needs to be fixed. Just wrong. And so with this art instructor, he showed me and taught me why the body moves this way, why muscles are here, why muscles are there, how things fit together. And so I got more of a understanding of anatomy and drawing, and just the fundamental skills and techniques of like drawing from real life.
So that was a huge step forward for you then.
Oh yeah. And as like a 17, 18-year-old kid, it was pretty pivotal to my young brain because I was thinking that I was good this whole time when I wasn't. I just was gifted or talented, I guess. And it was one of those things where it's like, talent is one thing, but you need to practice it and get the skill to be better, because talent would just be wasted if you don't really learn how to understand why it is you have this gift or you have this ability.
Oh, an incredibly valuable lesson. Now you made it through that. I'm glad your ego could withstand it and you were able
Yeah,
to move
yeah.
past it.
And it what's really funny that year too, that same guidance counselor that put me in that art class. Prior to that, my grades were kind of slipping up and down my freshman year and stuff because I was just distracted. And she brought me in the office and says, you got to make up these credits and get all this stuff so you get ready to graduate, walk on time. I said, okay. And she asked me what my plan was. And I was like, well, I want to be an artist. And she completely crushed that dream and discouraged me and said, art's not really a career that's going to get you anywhere or put you in a place to succeed. And I held on to that comment that she made, although I still kind of graduated and I ended up becoming an artist years later, but I remember holding on to that and feeling like maybe she's right. And I had quit drawing for a while and got into the workforce and worked retail and things like that and found myself just miserable. And a friend of mine talked me into going to college and getting a degree, or at least enrolling in something, some sort of higher education that involves art and creativity. And I remember thinking, but my guidance counselor told me that this wasn't going to get me anywhere. So that like stuck with me for a long, long time, like years and years and years. And it was always in the back of my head. Even when I was doing art and somewhat successful at it, I still was like, well, is this going to be enough? Or can I make this enough? And so I would bounce around with do art for a while and then work full time and then do a little bit of art on the side and then work, and finally making a decision about 8 years ago, I finally made the decision to do art full time. And that was partly a decision that I couldn't balance working full time and putting a lot of effort into being a good dad as well and trying to do art. Like something had to give, and I didn't want to give up my time as a father, and I didn't want to give up my art. So the full-time job had to go. And I was trying to find ways to maneuver, like how can I do part-time, or how can I do, or maybe I could take a leave of absence and pursue a full-time art career, or maybe I could cut my schedule in half. And I found that to all be overwhelming. And my dad finally just asked me a question. He says, what could you do with an extra 40 hours a week? And that was the one thing I never thought of. If I had an extra 40 hours a week, what could I do and what can I accomplish creatively with an extra 40 hours a week? And sometimes it was 40 plus because I was commuting. So it's probably like more like 50 hours a week. And it clicked. And I said, okay. So I put in my 2-week notice and haven't looked back.
That's amazing that your dad had that sort of outlook, because I know a lot of parents, like my parents, were very practical minded. I had a sort of similar experience to you in that when I was in school, my best skill was writing, and English class was very easy to me. But my parents said, no, you need to get a business degree. And that's what I have is a business degree, even though I had some passion for it, but definitely not like writing. So
yeah.
And you said your dad had been in the army. What did he do after he got out of the army?
Oh, he just went into working, and he began driving trucks, and over the years became a dock supervisor out in the city of Commerce. And he did that for a long time. He just was kind of in the trucking industry and was like, this is good for me. I don't know whose side of the family the art and the creativity is on, because I haven't met any other aunts or uncles that are in this field. So it's like I'm this not standalone, but like I'm still waiting to see, like there's got to be some other family member that's in the creative field that I either haven't came across or I will eventually come across, or maybe down the lineage in the past. I do one of those hereditary DNA checks or whatever to see who was the artist in the family from a long time ago.
Well, and like you mentioned, your dad had been into comic books, but you didn't know that until years later. So who knows? Maybe somebody had an artistic ability, but they didn't express it, or they got the same advice you did.
Yeah. And say, do something more practical.
So what's inspiring your art now? Now you've been a full-time artist. What gives you the inspiration and the creativity?
You know what? There's a lot of things, Frank. There's sometimes I'll just see something and be like, that'd be cool to paint, or movies or individuals. I'll just say, oh, this person would be cool to paint as this or as that. It comes from so many different outputs and stuff, because I'm such a fan of art and creativity. Like I don't like a certain style. Like I'm into graffiti art. I'm into comic book art, of course. I'm into fine art. I was actually classically trained when I graduated from Brooks College in 2006, I got a job teaching fine art. And it was through a private art company. So they kind of taught you the fundamental skills, and then they taught you how to teach these fundamental skills. So drawing and painting, watercolor, pastel, oil painting. So there was a period in my life where I was doing a lot of very realistic artwork and a lot of expressionistic artwork, a lot of learning how some of the old masters painted and using their techniques like oil painting, glazing, finding ways to paint like Van Gogh or Cezanne and some of the other impressionists, and even painting from Rembrandt paintings and things like that. So I have a pretty eclectic background in art, and I try to pull from all of those different artists and techniques. And so I think a lot of my inspiration will come from, I wonder what I can do using this technique and that, or can spray paint be applied to this, or can I mix media some stuff? And then when it comes to a lot of my feminine inspired artwork, some of my paintings from the past, I would just see a woman or a female figure in just a amazingly empowered pose. And I'd say, oh, I got to slap some armor on her, or stick a sword in her hand, or give her a crazy afro or something. And it'll just kind of go from there. It'll just be just the pose can inspire me as well.
And is that where the Bushido, I don't know if you call it a motif, but you have a lot of Bushido.
Yeah. Yeah. So the beauty of Bushido, when I was doing a lot of that, I was at this stage where I was painting, or I was trying to create more feminine artwork. And to give you more context to the origin of that, I started out doing paintings of women with different hairstyles because I don't know, going into like hair salons and beauty salons, you always saw those old like 1980s, early 90s posters, and they're like black and white with maybe a couple of other colors or more like maybe red or gray or something. And they're just these very plain graphic depictions of women in hairstyles. And I was like, okay, there has to be more color in that just to liven up the salon. And so I just was doing a bunch of different, I'd go to like hair magazines and just look at a photo and say, okay, let me paint that. And I started to kind of sell them to different hair salons and stuff, or do shows at hair salons. And then I was thinking, well, I wonder how can I push this even farther? And so I was like, well, maybe I need to change the hair color or make the hair more vibrant or use more vibrant colors in my palette. And it started to evolve into different shades of reds and oranges and magenta and burgundy type colors. And then I was like, well, I still want to have a different message behind the artwork. I want to make the woman like empowered. And I was like, how can I make this a warrior woman? I was like, oh, a samurai, because I'm a big fan of samurais and things like that. So I was like, well, let me start turning these women into samurai. And I still wasn't going in the direction that I wanted to. Like, it's still something was missing. And so I was like, oh, it has to be the hair. The hair has to pop and like hit someone in the face when they see it. And I was messing with different colors and mixing colors and different bright colors, yellow, orange, red, and it just wasn't clicking. So finally I was like, okay, well, what color pops and that catches everyone's attention? And I was like, oh, let me try pink. But then I didn't want to do that because pink is always one of those colors that when you see it, you just assume it's for girls only. And I didn't want the message to only be like, oh, well, it's pink, it's just for girls. So I was like, well, what kind of pink is going to really pop? And at that time, my mother was going through breast cancer treatment. And so I started to think, oh, well, she's the strongest warrior that I know. Why don't I use breast cancer pink? And so I started messing with different neon pinks and vibrant pinks and things like that. And then that color just stuck. And it just kind of went from there. And so the pink hair kind of became her symbol of empowerment and bravery and all things related to just like the strength of women and men too that have gone through breast cancer treatment, or the families that have been affected by that. So that just kind of like took off on its own. And when people started to notice it from afar, and when I mean afar, I mean like I'd be at an art walk and people would come walking up from across the street and said, I saw the pink from all the way across the street. I was like, oh, I got it. That's the color. And I'm going to stick with that color. And I kind of just ran with it from there. And I remember I wanted to do this project. I was going to do all these different ink wash drawings of samurai warriors, and I wanted to do 47 based off the 47 Ronin story. And I remember doing 5 and being overwhelmed. Like, there's no way I could paint 47 different poses of a samurai woman where it doesn't look like it's the same pose. And then I got to 10, and then I was at 20. And next thing I know, I was at 35. And I was like, oh, wow, it is possible. And then I got to 40. And then I think as far as like the ink washes, I think I've done up to like 100 different poses of that. And it originally started out as 47, but I've done so much more because there's always a different pose out there. But I remember thinking, I can't find 47 poses online. I can't even come up with 47 different poses. And I was trying to pose and figure out if there's this pose or that pose. And, I actually was able to pull it off, and realizing that, oh yeah, there's like 1,000 different poses I could stick somebody in. So 47 is just like a small number.
So you realized that your creativity didn't have that sort of limit on it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where you put the limit on yourself. And it happens with artists, and I'm not immune to it still. Like, there's still sometimes I'm just like, oh, I can't pull this off. And then I find my way around it, or I find an easier way to do it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there is a way around this.
Thanks for listening so far. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Then head to www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and pick up some tasty pub snacks, barware, and more. Every purchase you make helps us support small family-owned businesses in rural Japan and bring you more delicious, unique snacks to pair with your favorite beverages. Special thanks to all of you that have already started enjoying our snacks and sharing them with your buddies. Now, I wanted to ask, since your mother is a breast cancer survivor, have you done anything with Susan G. Komen?
Yeah. So I did it was a fundraiser and an event with a business owner named Crystal Rogers. She owns a lingerie boutique in Bixby Knolls called Lucy's Boudoir. And she actually is a huge supporter, cheerleader, just all around promoter of my artwork since like the early days when I was doing a lot of First Friday events in Bixby Knolls. And she puts on an event every year. And one year I went down there, did a live painting of a samurai, and several people were in attendance. There was breast cancer survivors that were giving speeches, and we auctioned off a bunch of artwork, and it was great. And I donated money to the Susan G. Komen Foundation. I passed out like little pink ribbons for people. And it was great to really work with that group and have them recognize the artwork too. I do want to do more work with them. Sometimes I tend to take on more projects than I have hands for, and start something and then start something and then start something and then start something and start something. And I've always been like that. I've had 6 or 7 paintings around that I started that I thought was going to be a good idea. And then I'll get inspired by something else, and then I'll start working on that. And then I get inspired by 5 more things. I'll start working on that. And then I'll go back to that old painting and say, oh yeah, I remember that. I wonder what direction I was going to go in. And sometimes the painting will evolve into something else because I'll start it with a certain technique in mind. And then months or years later, I'll go back to it and I've learned something completely different. Then I'm like, I can apply that to this painting and push the creativity on this piece even farther because I've learned a whole new way to do something faster or different or have a different outcome.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned one local place, but your artwork is all over the place in Long Beach and Los Angeles. So where are some places that people can see it?
Oh man. Yeah. I'm so blessed by having so many opportunities and different people reach out to me. I have some artwork on some utility boxes around Long Beach. One of them's by the Billie Jean King Library on Broadway and what's that? First.
Yeah.
And it's a little girl sitting on a stack of books. That was a really cool project. And it's perfectly placed in front of a library. That was a design that was originally designed for a wall, but ended up getting put on the electrical boxes. So that was like perfect timing for that. And then further down this Broadway, there's another utility box painted with crayons. And I did that one as well. When they had the protesting, a lot of the boarded up businesses did a lot of artwork on the boards. And those boards have been collected and they're working on trying to put them in a permanent fixture in a display. in some place in Long Beach. I'm not really sure. I'm still waiting on the DOBA to find which place they're going to be doing that. I have a giant octopus at the Wood and Salt Tavern on Atlantic Avenue in Bixby Knolls, restaurant over there. I have another indoor mural at a event space in Inglewood, and it's more geared towards LA and all things Los Angeles, like LAX and Randy's Donuts and stuff. But it's a really cool event space for private events and parties, and photo shoots and video shoots and stuff. And right now I'm going to be working on two more murals. One's an electrical box, and another one's actually going to be at Los Cerritos Park in Bixby Knolls. And that one's going to be geared towards kids because I want to do more when it comes to mural work. I want to have more mural work that kids can relate to. Because there's a lot of beautiful artwork in the city of Long Beach, but most of it's not kid relatable. Like the kids see it, but they can't really connect to it. It just looks really cool. So I want to do a more mural work that focuses and emphasizes young people and kids because they're walking around the city just as much as we are. And for them to be able to see stuff that they can identify with, I think is very inspirational for them and motivating for them just to see like, oh yeah, that could be me. And that's why I wanted to do the little girl in the books by the library, because I know kids going in and out of there. And that was an amazing experience. Even while I was painting that on the street, kids would walk up and say, oh wow, it's a little kid. Like, that's so cool. And they'd say, Mommy, look, it's a little girl, it's a little boy, look, look, look. And that was very inspiring to me to continue to try to, when I do more mural work, to focus more on designs for kids.
No, definitely had that impression on my son as well before the library closed for the pandemic. Yeah, we used to go over there all the time because he loves that library. And it caught his eye too. That's how I became aware of you, was because of that electric box mural. Awesome. Yeah. So I thought that was fantastic. I love anything like that because it's so much better than, say, a lot of modern architecture has very straight lines and very plain surfaces, and you don't see any paintings, you don't see any real artistic touch. So I'd love to see that. And also on all, industrial objects, if you want to call them that, like throughout LA, there's all these surfaces that aren't doing anything. And to have something that's inspiring and beautiful, I think is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really wanted to contribute to city beautification just because of this city treating me so well and embracing me as an artist and a creative. I wanted to, especially during the protests, because it just looked like a hardware store. And so I was like, we got to slap some stuff on here and make the city pretty again, at least in the meantime, while all we get to look at is plywood everywhere. That was a really, really great opportunity to give back to the city that has shown me so much love and so much support, and to also get some imagery out there for young people to look at and to inspire. Because I know it's arts and the creative education is one of those. It's one of those things that's kind of been moved out of the schools and stuff. And so there's a lot of creative kids. There's more creative kids than there is athletic kids. I was lucky to be pretty good at both. So I can play basketball and football and I can draw, but there's not a whole lot of kids that are athletic, but they're very gifted and talented creatively. And what do they get to do with their free time or their abilities other than sit in the TV and stream stuff all day? There's not a whole lot of opportunities and outlets for them to do. And one of the things I've been fortunate enough to connect with is a group called Scholars Collective. And they have a facility located in downtown, like literally right around the corner from where I live. And it's a enrichment center that focuses on a lot of STEM stuff and engineering and mathematics. There's tutoring, there's gaming in there. There's a lot of science involved too. Yeah. And then I facilitate and teach art classes, and I'm the resident artist there as well. So it's my art studio, and I'm teaching art classes and allowing kids to have different outlets outside of, they can't play sports. And for all the gamers out there, we're going to have like computer building in there. We're going to have some game design. We got a lot of cool things that we're trying to put together for a lot of the young people in Long Beach to give them another outlet that they don't have in school, and to give them a creative space outside of school.
Is that game room you're working on right now, is that there?
Yeah, so that big, huge mural that's got all the 8-bit style stuff, that's in one of the rooms that is in the facility that we have.
That's awesome. Yeah, that looks
Yeah,
really, really cool.
yeah. I'm gonna try to finish it up today,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. No, I mean, as you know, I was born in the early 80s, so I appreciate all the 8-bit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
awesome.
fantastic. Now, you've worked with some craft breweries around town as well. What were some of the breweries you worked with? Because I know you did something with Liberation Brewing.
Oh yeah, so they would have art shows and they'd have art events and everything. And that was when I was living in Bixby Knolls too at that time. And we did a lot of like I did a live painting there, and they would auction off the artwork, and they'd have really cool pop-up shows for local artists to come in, which is really cool. And I like that the businesses were getting involved with the creatives, and it was kind of a cross promotion too for both parties. And that was, I'm trying to remember the holiday. I think it was Veterans Day. So I did a series of different paintings that had pinup girls. And I did like a kind of a collaborative pinup girl, and I had some of their logos and designs and sold a couple of those pieces. And then I did for Black History Month, I did a live painting of Jackie Robinson for all the Dodger fans out there. So that was a lot of fun. And that was cool. I wanted to do more with what's the other one that just opened? Is it Ambitious Ale?
Yeah, right across the
I
street.
think that right across the street. Yeah, but then I moved out to downtown, so I was now I'm more located next to Beechwood Brewery and
Congregation Ale House.
yeah, Congregation. Yeah. I haven't done anything with them yet. Yeah, I haven't done
Yeah,
anything with them yet. Yeah,
they got
but
a
yeah,
really
they're
cool
right on the
building.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely opportunities. The inside of it's not much to look at. They just got the beer menu, and that's about it. So
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
yeah. Now, we had been emailing before we did this recording about doing a commission, and I wanted everyone to know about how this commissioning process works because, if somebody wants to work with you, how do they go about do it? What's the process like? How should they approach you?
So I have my Instagram, Art by LaJon. I also have my email, LaJon Miller, LaJonMiller 255 at gmail.com. And you can reach out to me through either one of those avenues. And I can email back my pricing rates. And it's pretty straightforward, 50% deposit up front. And that gets me going on the design and everything. And the remaining balance paid upon completion of the mural. And I take payment through PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, old school checks. If you still write those things, hand cash too. Shipping, that is an additional fee if it's outside of like the LA County area in California. But I do ship artwork, and I love getting artwork out there. I just shipped a couple of pieces a few months ago to New York, which is a lot of fun. And my color palette is an option. It's not mandatory. A lot of people think everything has to have the pink or the teal. That is just the colors that I enjoy using in my paintings, but I'm familiar with all of the colors. So I don't regulate my commissions to only one specific color palette. In fact, I will actually ask my clients, is this going in a specific room? Send me a photo of the room and the decor, and I will match the palette to fit the decor. So that way it doesn't clash or stand out too much in the room. And I've done that before. People send me like, oh, I have this couch and it's got all these cool, colorful pillows. And I'm like, oh, send me a picture of the pillows. And I just take that color palette and then I just run with that. And I work with multiple different sizes. I also do mural work, both indoor and outdoor. Those rates will depend based on the size of the wall. So if it's a full wall, I charge by the square foot. But if it's just maybe a small logo in the wall or a little image on the wall, I would charge based off the difficulty of the design, or how complicated the design is. And I've
Sure.
done mural work inside of nurseries and daycare centers. I did a mural in a client, and she had two daughters, and one daughter was really into marine biology, and the other daughter was into zoology. So that was a lot of fun. So one room had a bunch of fish and oceanic themed stuff, and the other room had like jungle themes and giraffes and things like that. So that was a lot of fun to do as well.
That's really cool. It'd be the best kids room you could have.
Oh yeah, custom artwork and I even do like little emojis of their little faces down at the bottom, so it kind of like individualized their own little room. So that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm excited because what I had approached LaJon about was doing Sakamoto Ryoma, a famous samurai who I shared his story about a year ago when the protests were going on. I thought he had a very interesting story people would appreciate. So I had shared it on Instagram. And of course, I'd watched the drama that NHK did. If anybody can download that, I recommend it. It's like a year-long drama, but amazing just about his life. And so I was really excited that you knew about it, LaJon, that you knew about him. And
because he had like a sumo wrestler for like a bodyguard, right?
he did. He had a sumo wrestler as a bodyguard. Unfortunately, that didn't help him when they finally got him. But
yeah, they sent a bunch of assassins after him.
Yeah, he didn't have a fighting chance. It wasn't fair. But to this day, they still aren't sure exactly who assassinated him, which is also adds to the mystique. Yeah. And I actually
they don't know who or who sent the assassin.
They don't know who the assassins were exactly. There's a few different groups that they think it could have been, but nobody actually claimed it. Nobody actually said it was us and we killed him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But him being him, he was in trouble with a lot of people because he was a revolutionary.
Yeah. And he went after, I think he was like a Ronin. He went after somebody and they talked him out of killing him. Like he went after to kill somebody, and I think he persuaded him not to kill him, right?
Yeah. I want to read his biography again. It's just so fascinating because he went from this small town, low-ranking samurai that was getting crapped on by everybody in the village to a complete hero. It's amazing. Yeah. So
tell me about the painting. Like, how would you like the depiction of this character in this piece? Any particular colors you'd like to see? Do you want a bust pose, which from like the waist on up, or the full figure pose?
I was thinking full figure, and I only was thinking that because one of his signatures was that he was a samurai, but he wore Western style boots.
Yeah.
It was one of the weird things about him. So he insisted on wearing boots instead of any sort of native Japanese shoes or footwear. So I wanted that color wise. I mean, just the drinking buddy, the red that we have, that's the only color I'd want in there somewhere. Because I think it draws on Japan. It's a big part of our brand. Other than that, I just want to see him brought to life because of course his photographs were taken before there was color. So it's always that sort of sepia tone. Also very aged. So just to see him brought to life, but a little bit of the red. And other than that, I wanted to leave it up to you. I don't want to dictate too many colors in the palette.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited because I haven't painted a samurai in a while. So it'd be good to get back in that into that subject matter again.
Have you ever seen the show Yae Sakura? If you haven't, YAE. Yae Sakura is about a female samurai. I thought that might be right down your alley. Very interesting story because, of course, her brother and her father and everybody's a samurai, but in the war that they're involved in, she ends up becoming a warrior as well. So it's a really cool story.
Yeah. When I was doing a lot of the Bushido stuff and I was looking for reference materials and I started to kind of look into the culture of the samurai, and I found that a lot of the women were trained in the martial arts to protect the village when the samurais were away at war. And I remember being approached by a lot of people like, oh, there was female samurais? So I was like, yeah, there was a lot of them. And they were like, really? It's like, there was a lot of female samurais. Because who else had to protect the village when they left? And they were taught a lot of the skills and the swordsmanship and the techniques to protect the village when the male warriors were away fighting the wars. Now, you don't really hear a lot of talk about it because a lot of cultures don't discuss female empowerment back then. So you have to do your own digging and your own research to really get that information out there because it's not widely publicized.
Thanks so much to LaJon Miller. Find out more about his work by checking the links in our episode description. In our next episode, I'll be chatting with Professor Edward Slingerland, author of Trying Not to Try, and his latest book, Drunk: How We Sipped, Danced, and Stumbled Our Way to Civilization. Thanks for listening to The Drinking Buddies Show. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your buddies. Check out our latest artisanal snack offerings at www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Take care and drink well.